Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our show where we learn, share, and grow together. I'm your host, B.
And I'm G. Welcome back. Hope you like our previous show.
Have you ever sat in your car after a long shift, just staring at the steering wheel, completely exhausted, and decided to open your banking app? You look at the number, and even though you've been working yourself to the bone, it feels like you're just running in place. You've done everything you were told to do. You went to school, you got the job, you cut back on going out, yet the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels like an ocean. It's this quiet, invisible weight that a lot of us carry around every single day. We are told that one day we'll reach this magical milestone, $1 million, and finally feel safe. But when you're looking at a balance that barely moves after a year of sacrifices, that $1 million goal doesn't feel like a target. It feels like a cruel joke.
It really does. And I think the reason it feels that way is because the traditional financial advice we've all been fed is fundamentally broken when it comes to human psychology. We're given these linear spreadsheets that tell us to save a tiny percentage of our income for 40 years, and we're expected to stay motivated by a payoff that happens when we're too old to fully enjoy it. But humans aren't spreadsheets. We need feedback. When you save your first $5,000 and the market goes up by 8%, you make $400. That doesn't change your life. It doesn't pay your rent, it doesn't fix your car if the transmission blows, and it certainly doesn't make you feel wealthy. So your brain looks at that tiny reward, compares it to the massive sacrifice you made to save that money, and concludes that investing isn't worth the pain. We give up because the system feels rigged against the beginner.
Exactly. We blame ourselves for a lack of discipline, when, in reality, we're just reacting to a terrible feedback loop. The truth that nobody wants to talk about because it isn't comforting is that the wealth-building process is incredibly front-heavy. The game completely changes once you hit a specific number, and that number is $100,000. Getting to that first $100,000 is, without a doubt, the hardest, most grueling part of the entire financial journey. It requires raw effort, sacrifice, and a level of intentionality that feels unnatural. But once you cross that threshold, something beautiful happens. The laws of financial physics shift. Your money stops being a passive bystander and starts doing the heavy lifting for you. The journey to $1 million isn't a long, agonizing marathon at the same intense pace. It's a short, sharp sprint to 100,000, and then letting time and compound interest carry you the rest of the way.
That's the core misconception right there. People think that going from 100,000 to $1 million requires 10 times more suffering than getting to the first 100,000. But the math tells a completely different story. When you're starting from zero, every single dollar in your account is a direct result of your sweat, your missed dinners, your extra shifts, and your anxiety. Your money is essentially dead weight. It's not helping you. But when you have $100,000 working for you, a standard 8 to 10% return in the market means your money is generating $8,000 to $10,000 a year, all by itself. Think about that for a second. That is more than what many people are able to save from their actual paychecks after paying for rent, groceries, and insurance. Suddenly, you aren't the only one working in the relationship. You have a silent partner who is putting in overtime every single night while you sleep.
It's like trying to push a stalled car up a massive hill. At the very bottom, it takes everything you have just to get the tires to turn an inch. Your legs are shaking, your chest is burning, and you look up and realize you've only moved 2 feet. That is what saving your first $10,000 or $20,000 feels like. You look at your lifestyle, you see what you've given up, and you wonder if it's even worth it. But if you can just keep pushing until you reach the crest of that hill, which is that $100,000 mark, the car starts rolling forward on its own momentum. You don't have to push with that same agonizing force anymore. You just have to keep your hands on the wheel and guide it.
Let's actually look at what that looks like in real life, because I think people need to see the psychological reality of this. Imagine two people. The first person decides they want to save $1 million by doing it slowly and steadily over their entire career. They save a few $100s a month, they stress about every purchase, and they spend 35 years in a constant state of low-level financial anxiety. Now look at the second person. They decide to make a conscious, temporary pact with themselves. They say, for the next 4 or 5 years, I'm going to focus completely on getting to $100,000 as fast as humanly possible. They take the extra shifts, they live below their means, they manage their rent, and they put every spare dollar into building that launch pad. Once they hit that $100,000, they stop sprinting. They don't stop saving entirely, but they let their foot off the gas. They change jobs to something they love more, even if it pays a little less. They buy the nicer groceries. They breathe. Because they front-loaded the effort, that $100,000, left alone to grow for 30 years without them adding another single penny, turns into over $1 million on its own.
When you put it that way, it completely reframes the sacrifice. It turns an endless sentence of deprivation into a temporary project with a clear end date. And that's the turning point for most people mentally. When you realize that you don't have to live like a starving student for the next 40 years, the anxiety starts to melt away. You realize you just need a strategy for right now. The pressure shifts from, I have to be rich tomorrow, to, I just need to buy my freedom today. Because that's what that first $100,000 actually represents. It's not just a number on a screen, it's options. It's the ability to walk away from a toxic boss who makes your stomach knot up every Sunday night. It's the ability to take a breath when your company announces layoffs, knowing you have a cushion that can sustain you for months or even years. True peace of mind doesn't wait until you have 7 figures in the bank. It starts the moment you realize you are no longer trapped by next month's rent.
That mental freedom changes the way you show up in the world. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, or when your savings are so low that one bad day could ruin you, you operate from a place of scarcity and fear. You accept lower pay, you tolerate disrespect, and you make short-sighted financial decisions because you're in survival mode. But when you cross that threshold, when you have that foundational wealth built up, your posture changes. You speak with more confidence in meetings. You negotiate harder for your worth because you have the ultimate leverage, the power to say no. It's a fascinating psychological paradox. The people who need money the least are often the ones who can command the highest salaries and the best opportunities, simply because they aren't desperate. Building that first 100,000 is how you transition from being defensive to playing offense in your own life.
So, how does someone actually do this without falling into the trap of toxic hustle culture? Because we've all seen those videos online telling you to sleep 3 hours a night, eat nothing but rice, and cut off all your friends. That's not sustainable. And honestly, it's a deeply miserable way to live. The goal isn't to destroy your youth to fund your old age. The practical approach to getting to that first 100,000 fast is about identifying the big structural levers in your life, not obsessing over the tiny details. People spend so much mental energy feeling guilty about buying an $8 coffee, yet they ignore the fact that their rent takes up 50% of their income, or they're driving a car with a $600 monthly payment that they can't actually afford.
It really is about focusing on the macro decisions. If you can keep your fixed housing expenses low for just a few years, whether that means keeping a roommate a little longer, staying in a smaller apartment, or living with family if that's an option, You are freeing up hundreds of dollars every single month without having to micromanage your daily happiness. The same goes for your vehicle. We live in a society that uses cars as a moving billboard for our status. We take on massive debt just to show people we don't know that we're doing well. If you can drive a reliable, unglamorous vehicle that is paid off, and channel that potential car payment straight into your investments, you will watch your progress accelerate dramatically. It's not about depriving yourself of joy, it's about choosing your sacrifices intentionally so they actually count.
And it's also about understanding that this process isn't linear. There will be months where your car breaks down, or you have a medical bill, and your savings rate drops to zero. That is not a failure. That is just life happening. The danger is letting those setbacks derail your entire mindset. People hit one bump in the road, assume they'll never get ahead, and go out and spend money they don't have because they feel defeated. We have to learn to forgive ourselves for the messy months. The path to 100,000 is a series of small, unsexy choices that compound over time. It's about consistency, not perfection.
I think we also need to address the time anxiety that so many people feel. We live in an era of hyper-visibility, where we see 22-year-olds on social media standing in front of mansions and sports cars. It creates this artificial timeline in our heads that tells us if we haven't made it by 25, we've failed. But wealth that is built overnight is almost always lost overnight, because the person didn't develop the psychological maturity required to sustain it. The years you spend building that first $100,000 are the years where you are forging your financial character. You are learning how to handle market volatility. You are learning how to control your impulses, and you are learning what truly matters to you. That process takes time, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be.
When you look back at the people who have achieved long-term financial peace, they rarely talk about a single lottery ticket moment. They talk about the quiet years. The years where they just put their head down, did the work, kept their expenses stable while their income grew, and let the boring magic of time take over. There is a deep, profound beauty in that boredom. It frees you from the need to constantly chase the next hot stock or the latest crypto trend. You don't need to find a needle in a haystack to be wealthy. You just need to build a solid foundation, trust the system, and give yourself permission to live your life while the numbers do their thing.
If you're watching this right now, and you feel overwhelmed by how far away that $1 million mark seems, I want you to take a deep breath and let that weight go. You don't have to figure out the next 30 years today. You don't have to solve every financial problem you will ever face by tomorrow morning. Your only job right now is to focus on the next step. Focus on building that momentum, dollar by dollar, until you hit that point where the gravity changes.
Progress isn't a straight line, and it doesn't happen all at once. Every time you choose your future self over a temporary impulse, you are winning. Be patient with the process, be gentle with yourself during the hard months, and remember that building wealth isn't about buying a luxury lifestyle. It's about buying your time back. It's about creating a life where you are the author of your own days. Get to that first milestone, anchor yourself there, and then let time do what it has always done best. You are closer than you think, and you have everything you need to get there. Hope you enjoy the discussion today. Please comment, like, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.
We shall learn, share, and grow together. Thanks. Take care and goodbye.